The security guard did not look me in the eye. He was 24. His name was Marcus. I knew his name because I had approved his health insurance. Adjustment 3 months. Ago when his daughter was born. Now he was holding a gray plastic bin, waiting for me to finish putting my notebook, my fountain pen, and a single framed photograph of my mother into it. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Vance," he said. He said it so quietly the microphone on the security camera above us probably didn't catch it. "It's not your fault, Marcus," I said. I picked up the bin. The plastic was cold. The edges dug into the palms of my hands, but I did not adjust my grip. I walked out of the glass double doors of Vance Logistics, a company that did not exist 4 years ago. A company that had processed $340 million in digital freight movements pichhle 12 mahine mein. A company whose entire back-end architecture, every line of routing code, every automated customs clearing protocol, every predictive supply chain algorithm had been written by me. Sitting at this exact kitchen table, drinking black coffee, watching the sun come up over a city that didn't care who was working, as long as the trucks kept moving. My husband, Julian Vance, was still sitting in the boardroom on the 24th floor. Beside him was his father, Arthur Vance. Arthur was 74. He was the kind of man who wore three-piece suits to breakfast and spoke about legacy, the way regular people spoke, about the weather, as if it were something he naturally owned and regulated. 10 minutes ago, Arthur had pushed a document across the mahogany table. Not a severance package, a restructuring notice. "The board has decided to streamline operations, Elena," Arthur had said. His voice had that particular heavy, inherited authority that requires no effort to project. "We are moving toward an institutional management model. Your creative input was essential in Phase 1, but Phase 2 requires traditional leadership." I'd looked at Julian, my husband of 5 years, the man who 3 years ago, when the first major venture capital firm turned us down, had sat on the floor of our empty apartment and put his head in my lap and told me he would go back to waiting tables if it meant I could keep coding. Now Julian was looking at his gold watch. He didn't look at the document. He didn't look at my hands. He looked at the window, at the gray clouds moving over the river, with the particular vacant neutrality of someone who has chosen to turn himself into an object so he doesn't have to feel the weight of what he is allowing to happen. "Traditional leadership," I had repeated. "We have brought in Sterling and Croft to manage the transition," Arthur said. "Your shares will be held in a non-voting trust until the evaluation period concludes. You will vacate the premises by 4 p.m. I didn't argue. I didn't tell them that Sterling and Croft's standard enterprise software couldn't handle the multi-tenant cross-docking matrix we used for our primary European contracts. I didn't tell them that our entire system ran on a proprietary load balancing protocol that I had custom-built to bypass the standard LAC and regional server relays. I didn't say a single word. I picked up my pen. I signed the transition acknowledgement. And then I looked at Arthur Vance, and I gave him the smallest, quietest smile. Not because I was defeated, not because 22% of my life's work being moved into a non-voting trust was acceptable. I smiled because exactly 47 minutes before I walked into that boardroom, before Arthur had opened his mouth, a system diagnostic alert had pinged on my private monitor. The main servers were scheduled for their automated quarterly security handshake at 5 p.m. The handshake required a master encryption key. Arthur didn't know what an encryption key was. Julian thought it was automated by the server host, but it wasn't. It was managed by me. My name is Elena Vance. I am 31 years old. And what happened in the 48 hours after I walked out of that building with a plastic bin is something the Vance family never saw coming from their 24th floor windows. I drove home in silence. I did not call my mother. I did not call my attorney. Not yet. I parked my car in the driveway of the house we had bought 18 months ago. A modern house with too much glass and not enough walls. The kind of house Julian liked because it looked like the magazines he spent his afternoons reading. I went into the basement. My workspace was a steel desk under a single fluorescent light. No mahogany, no river views. Just 2 high-performance monitors and a dedicated server rack hummed in the corner. The secondary node that I had maintained on my own budget since day one. I opened my private laptop. I did not log into the company network. I had been stripped of my credentials at 3:58 p.m. I knew, because the system had sent an automated notification to my personal inbox. Instead, I opened a terminal window that connected directly to the raw server hardware, located in a Tier 3 data center in Frankfurt. A server rack that was registered under my maiden name, Elena Rostov Tech Holdings, LLC. The Vances had bought the software. They had bought the trademark. They had bought the office chairs and the glass walls. But they had leased the infrastructure from me. Let me explain the architecture. Because the architecture is where the story lives. In logistics, everything is about timing. If a container sits on a dock in Rotterdam for more than 4 hours, the demurrage fees begin. If a truck misses its appointment window in Munich by 15 minutes, the slot is given to a competitor, and the cargo sits for 24 hours. Vance Logistics was successful because my software didn't allow gaps. It recalculated routes every 40 seconds based on real-time traffic, weather, and customs delays. At 4:45 p.m., my phone rang. It was Julian. I let it ring 3 times before I answered. "Elena," he said. He didn't use his regular voice, the warm, slightly lazy voice he used when we were deciding what to order for dinner. He used his executive voice, the one he had spent the last 6 months practicing in front of the mirror. "Are you home?" "I am," I said. "Look, about the boardroom." My father felt it was necessary to create a clean line. "For the institutional investors, it's not personal." "I know it's not personal, Julian," I said. "If it were personal, you would have looked at me when your father handed me the paper." A long pause on the line. I could hear the background hum of the 24th floor, the soft murmur of analysts, the chime of the coffee machine, the particular expensive quiet of a machine that was running on my fuel. "We need the administrative password for the legacy database," he said. "The Sterling and Croft team is trying to port the customer accounts over to their system, and they're hitting a firewall." I looked at my monitor. The clock read 4:52 p.m. "The firewall isn't an administrative block, Julian," I said softly. "Then what is it?" "It's a structural handshake. The system needs to verify that the core architecture is still authorized to run the algorithm. It happens every 90 days. Well, can you just give them the clearance code? They have a launch scheduled for tomorrow morning for the new British retail contract. If the system isn't online by 6:20 a.m., the penalties are £50,000 a day." I leaned back in my chair. The steel of the desk felt solid against my forearms. "I can't do that, Julian," I said. "What do you mean you can't?" "Elena, don't be emotional about this. You're still a shareholder. If the company takes a hit, your trust takes a hit." "I'm not being emotional," I said. "I am being technical. The encryption key is linked to my digital signature. My digital signature was removed from the company registry at 3:58 p.m. by your father's order. The system has automatically flagged the platform as an unauthorized copy." The silence that followed was different from the previous one. This was the specific, cold silence of a man who has just walked to the edge of a platform and realized the bridge he thought was under his feet was just a shadow. "Fix it," he said. His executive voice was gone. He sounded like the 25-year-old boy who had failed his corporate accounting exam 3 times before. I sat down and rewrote his notes for him. "The key belongs to Elena Rostov Tech Holdings," I said. "The lease agreement for the routing matrix is in section 14 of the initial incorporating documents. Your father didn't read it because he said technical addendums were a waste of his time. Elena, I'll have my attorney send over the new lease terms in the morning," I said. I hung up. At 5 p.m. precisely, the bottom monitor on my desk turned red. Across the city, in the glass-walled office of Vance Logistics, 300 terminals blinked once, cleared their screens, and displayed 4 words in white text against a black background. "Critical access error. Key expired." The next 24 hours were what my father used to call the filtering of the noise. Arthur Vance called me at 6:14 a.m. He did not call my cell phone. He called the landline in the house, a number he had never used in 5 years of my marriage to his son. Elena, he said. The authority was still there, but it was brittle now, like old paper that had been left in the sun. We have 72 drivers, sitting at the border in Calais who cannot clear customs because the automated transit declarations are blocked. Our system is completely unresponsive. Good morning, Arthur, I said. I was sitting on my porch, watching the crows move across the grass. The system isn't unresponsive. It's waiting for the encryption key. This is sabotage, he said. He brought his hand down on something hard, probably his mahogany desk. I have our legal team reviewing your employment contract right now. You are in breach of your fiduciary duty to this firm. I am no longer an employee, Arthur, I said calmly. You removed me yesterday at 4 p.m. My fiduciary duty ended when my voting shares were transferred to your trust. Right now, I am simply the sole owner of the infrastructure your platform is trying to use without a valid license. We will sue you for every dollar you have, he spat. You can do that, I said, but the court date will take between 6 to 8 months. The British retail contract cancels in 72 hours if the shipments don't arrive. Your current demurrage liability at the channel ports is climbing by $8,000 every 60 minutes. You don't have 6 months, Arthur. You don't even have until Tuesday. He stopped breathing into the phone for a moment. I could hear someone in the room with him, probably a frantic Sterling and Croft consultant, whispering numbers into his ear. What do you want? He asked. It was the hardest thing he had ever had to say in his life. I want the trust dissolved, I said. I want my 22% shares converted back to full voting stock. I want Julian to resign from the operations committee because he doesn't know how operations work, and I want a signed, written apology from you on the company letterhead acknowledging that the core intellectual property of Vance Logistics belongs entirely to my firm. That is blackmail, he whispered. No, I said. That is the price of the license. You told me yesterday that Phase 2 required traditional leadership. This is traditional leadership, Arthur. I am protecting my assets. The negotiation lasted until 4:30 p.m. that afternoon. They tried 3 separate software development firms to break the encryption. Each one told them the same thing. The code wasn't locked behind a password. It was integrated into the server's hardware signature. To bypass it, they would have to rebuild the entire routing framework from scratch, a project that would take 4 months and cost upwards of $2 million. At 4:47 p.m., an email arrived in my private inbox. Attached was a scanned document. The trust was dissolved. My shares were restored. Julian's resignation from the operations seat was signed. And at the bottom was a short, paragraph-long statement signed by Arthur Vance, acknowledging the true architecture of the system. I logged into my terminal. I entered my digital signature. The red screens on my monitors turned green. Across the city, 72 trucks at the Calais border received their automated customs clearing barcodes simultaneously. The system began to move again. Julian didn't come home that night. He sent a text at 11:15 p.m., saying he was staying at his father's house to help with the reorganization. He moved his things out 3 days later while I was at the office. I have been the managing director of Vance Logistics for 14 months now. Arthur Vance retired 3 months ago, due to health reasons, which was the term his public relations team used to mean he could no longer stand, being in a room where his signature wasn't the most powerful thing on the paper. Julian works for a commercial real estate firm now. He does well. He has the kind of job where his charm is sufficient, where he can wear his gold watch and look at windows, and not have to understand how the machines under the floorboards actually run. Our revenue this year is up 34%. We don't use Sterling and Croft. We use our own code. We hire people who know how to build things, not people who know how to inherit them. Here is what 47 minutes before a performance review and a plastic bin and a red screen taught me. The world is full of people who mistake the building they are standing in for the strength of their own legs. They look down from glass walls, and they believe that because they have authority, they also have competence. Do not argue with them. Do not waste your breath trying to show them the foundation while they are busy looking at the ceiling. Just keep the master key. Build the infrastructure under your own name. And when they tell you that you are no longer needed, walk out quietly, because the numbers always speak eventually. And when the system crashes, they will have to call the person who knows how to make it run.